The stars looked cold and distant as the battleship Iron Justice dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge, watching the enemy fleet spread across the dark void like hungry wolves. His hands gripped the metal railing, until his knuckles turned white. 3 years ago, Earth had been green and blue and alive. Now it was a dead rock floating in space, its cities turned to glass by alien bombs. 3 years ago, humanity had 1,000 ships and colonies on 50 worlds. Now Jake commanded the last human warship in the galaxy. "Captain, long-range sensors are picking up the Coalition fleet," said Commander Lisa Brooks from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the worry in her eyes. 837 ships, sir, all classes." Jake nodded, slowly. He had expected this day would come. The Galactic Coalition had been hunting the remaining human ships for months, picking them off one by one. The Iron Justice was the last prize they needed to claim total victory. "How long before they reach firing range?" Jake asked. 20 minutes, sir," Lisa replied. She turned to look at him. "Captain, we could still try to run. The hyperdrive is ready." Jake shook his head. There was nowhere left to run. The Coalition controlled every star system within 1,000 light years. Even if they escaped this battle, they would just face the same fate somewhere else with less fuel and fewer supplies. "No," he said quietly. "We make our stand here." Bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of computers and life support systems. The crew knew what those numbers meant. 800 ships against 1. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Chief Engineer Pete Harris climbed up from the lower decks, wiping grease from his hands with an old rag. His uniform was stained with oil and sweat from working in the engine rooms for the past 72 hours without sleep. "Captain," Pete said, his voice tired but determined. "The special project is ready." Jake turned to face him. For the past month, Pete and his team had been working on something in the deepest parts of the ship. Something so secret that even Jake did not know all the details. Pete had only told him it was humanity's last hope. "Are you sure it will work?" Jake asked. Pete was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, sir, I have no idea. The math says it should work, but we are trying to do something that has never been done before. We are trying to break the rules of time itself." Dr. Amy Chen looked up from her science station. She had been Pete's partner in this mysterious project. Her face was pale from weeks of working with dangerous equipment and alien technology they barely understood. "The temporal displacement core is stable," Amy said. "All the calculations check out, but Captain, if this goes wrong, it could tear apart this entire star system, maybe more." Jake thought about that. If they failed, billions of people in nearby systems might die, but if they did nothing, humanity would be extinct within the hour. The Coalition had made it clear they would not accept surrender. They wanted every last human dead. "The Coalition fleet is hailing us," said Lieutenant Bob Taylor from the communications station. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a massive alien warship. Admiral Karen Stone sat in the command chair, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of her warrior caste. Behind her stood General Rex Vorthak, his reptilian eyes cold and hungry. Empress Zilia floated in a containment field, her insect-like body clicking with excitement. "Captain Sullivan," Admiral Stone said, her voice filled with the satisfaction of certain victory. "You have led us on quite a chase, but it ends here." Jake stepped forward, facing the screen. "Admiral Stone. Still, hiding behind superior numbers, I see." The alien admiral's face darkened. "You humans never learned your place. When we first met your species, we offered you a chance to serve the Coalition as a client race. You chose war instead." "We chose freedom," Jake replied. "Something your Coalition has forgotten the meaning of." General Vorthak leaned forward, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Your freedom ends today, mammal. Surrender your ship and we will make your death quick." "I have a better idea," Jake said. "Why don't you come and take it?" Empress Zilia's compound eyes gleamed with alien amusement. "Brave words from a dead species. We have 800 ships, you have one. Even humans should be able to understand that mathematics." Jake smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You know what your problem is? You think in straight lines. You See 800 ships and think you have already won. But humans? We think around corners. The alien commanders looked confused by his words. Admiral Stone narrowed her eyes. What are you talking about? You will find out soon enough, Jake said. Iron Justice out. The screen went dark. Jake turned to face his crew. Every man and woman on the bridge was looking at him, waiting for orders. They were scared, but they trusted him. They had followed him through 3 years of running and fighting and watching their friends die. All hands, battle stations, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. This is it, people. Today we find out what humans are really made of. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as the crew prepared for battle. Weapons came online, shields powered up, and damage control teams took their positions throughout the ship. Lisa checked her tactical display. Coalition fleet is moving into attack formation. They are not taking any chances, Captain. They are bringing everything they have. Jake walked over to Pete and Amy. How long do you need? 5 minutes to charge the core, Pete said. Maybe 10 to be safe. You have got 15 minutes, Jake replied. I will buy you that time. Amy grabbed his arm. Captain, you need to understand what we are doing. The temporal displacement core will not just call for help. It will reach across time itself. We do not know what we might bring back with us. Jake looked at her steadily. Doctor, in 15 minutes we will all be dead if we do nothing. I am willing to take that risk. Pete and Amy nodded and hurried toward the engineering decks. Jake watched them go, then turned back to the main screen. The Coalition fleet was getting closer, their ships moving in perfect formation like a school of metal fish. Captain, Lisa said quietly, the crew is asking what our battle plan is. Jake thought about all the battles they had fought and lost, all the friends who had died, all the worlds that had burned. Humanity had been pushed to the very edge of extinction by enemies who saw them as nothing more than dangerous animals to be put down. But humans had one advantage the aliens had never understood. When they were pushed to the wall with nowhere, left to run, they did not give up. They got creative. Our battle plan is simple, Jake said loud enough for the whole bridge to hear. We are going to show these aliens why you should never corner a human being. The Iron Justice turned to face the approaching enemy fleet, alone against impossible odds. But in the deepest parts of the ship, strange energies were building. The temporal displacement core hummed with power that could reach across time itself. Humanity's last gambit was about to begin. The first enemy missiles streaked through space like angry fireflies. Jake watched them approach on the tactical display, knowing each one carried enough explosive power to level a city. The Iron Justice shook as its defense systems tried to shoot down the incoming weapons. Shields holding at 60%, Lisa called out as explosions bloomed around the ship. But they are just testing our defenses, Captain. The real attack is coming. Jake nodded. The Coalition was being careful, using small groups of ships to probe for weaknesses. They wanted to capture the Iron Justice intact if possible, to study human technology before finishing off the species. In the engineering section, Pete Harris worked frantically at the temporal displacement core. The device was a strange mix of human engineering and alien technology they had salvaged from wrecked Coalition ships. Thick cables ran from the core to every part of the ship, drawing power from the engines, life support, even the lights. How much longer? Amy Chen asked, checking the readings on her scanner. The energy levels were climbing toward dangerous levels, making the air itself feel electric. 2 more minutes, Pete replied, sweat dripping from his face. The core is almost ready. But Amy, I need to tell you something. When we activate this thing, there is no going back. We do not know what version of ourselves we might call. Amy looked at the device with worried eyes. The temporal displacement core was built from theories they barely understood, using math that hurt to think about. They were trying to reach across time itself, to call for help from other versions of their ship that might exist in different timelines. On the bridge, Jake watched the Coalition fleet move closer. Admiral Stone was taking her time, letting the smaller ships wear down the Iron Justice while keeping her main battle fleet in reserve. It was smart tactics. It was also exactly what Jake was counting on. "Captain," Bob Taylor said from his communication station, "the aliens are demanding we surrender. Admiral Stone says she will give us one last chance." "Tell her thanks, but no thanks," Jake replied. "And Bob, add that humans do not surrender. We get creative." The coalition ships moved into final attack position. Jake could see them clearly now on the main screen. Hundreds of warships bristling with weapons, their hulls marked with the symbols of a dozen alien empires. Ships that had conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. Deep in the ship, Pete's hand hovered over the activation switch. "Amy, are you ready?" She nodded, though her face was pale with fear. "Do it, Pete. Whatever happens next, it has to be better than what we are facing now." Pete pressed the button. Reality screamed. The iron, Justice was suddenly surrounded by a bubble of twisted space and time. The stars outside began to bend and stretch like someone was pulling them through water. The ship shook so hard that crew members were thrown from their seats. "What is happening?" Lisa shouted over the noise of groaning metal and sparking electronics. Jake held onto his command chair and watched the impossible sight on the main screen. Space itself was tearing open around them, creating wounds in the universe that showed glimpses of other places, other times. The first rift opened directly in front of the Iron Justice. For a moment nothing came through except strange light. That hurt to look at. Then a ship emerged from the tear in space. Another Iron Justice, but different. This one was sleeker, more advanced, with weapons that did not exist in Jake's timeline. A second rift opened to their left. Another Iron Justice appeared, this one bearing scars from battles Jake had never fought. Its hull was painted with symbols he did not recognize, and its engines glowed with energy he had never seen before. More rifts opened. More ships came through. Each new Iron Justice was unique. Some looked exactly like Jake's ship, but flew different flags. Others had been modified with alien technology or rebuilt with advanced human designs. A few looked like they came from futures where humanity had won the war years ago. Within minutes, dozens of Iron Justice variants surrounded the original ship. Jake stared at the impossible fleet, his mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. "Captain," Amy's voice came over the communication system from engineering. "The temporal displacement core is working. We are calling Iron Justice ships from across multiple timelines, every possible version of our ship that exists or could exist." On the main screen, Jake could see the Coalition fleet had stopped moving. The alien ships hung in space like confused fish, their crews trying to understand what they were witnessing. Admiral Stone's flagship was transmitting on all frequencies, demanding explanations that no one could give. One of the temporal rifts opened larger than the others. Through it came an Iron Justice that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. This ship was massive, twice the size of his own vessel, with armor that looked like it had been forged from starlight itself. Weapon ports covered its hull like the eyes of some great predator. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the Iron Justice. Timeline designation Alpha 7, came a voice over the radio. It was Jake's own voice, but older, harder, carrying the weight of victories Jake had never won. "We received your call for help." "This is Captain Jake Sullivan, original timeline," Jake replied, still not quite believing what was happening. "I guess we all received each other's call." More voices joined the conversation as dozens of Jake Sullivans began coordinating with each other. Some were younger, from timelines where the war had started differently. Others were older, veterans, of campaigns that existed only in possibility. All of them had one thing in common: they were done running from the Coalition. The alien fleet was in chaos. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation now scattered like startled birds. Some tried to retreat, only to find their escape routes blocked by Iron Justice variants that had appeared behind them. General Vorthak's voice crackled over the emergency frequencies. "What sorcery is this? Humans do not possess temporal manipulation technology." "We do now," Jake replied on an open channel that every ship in the system could hear. "You wanted to hunt the last human ship in the galaxy? Congratulations. You found all of them." The Coalition commanders were screaming orders at their fleets, but their crews were too stunned to respond effectively. How do you fight an enemy that can call reinforcements from across time itself? How do you plan tactics against possibilities that should not exist? Lisa stared at her tactical display in amazement. Where moments before it had shown one human ship against 800 alien vessels, it now showed an even fight. More rifts were opening every second, bringing more Iron Justice variants into the battle. "Captain," she said with wonder in her voice, "we have over 400 ships now, and more are still coming." Jake smiled for the first time in 3 years. The smile was not pleasant. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized his prey had walked into a trap. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All Iron Justice variants, this is your timeline's original. You know what the Coalition did to our worlds. You know what they did to our people." His voice carried across dozens of timelines, reaching hundreds of versions of himself and his crew. Each ship represented a different possibility, a different path humanity might have taken. But they all shared the same memories of loss, the same anger at what had been taken from them. "Today," Jake continued, "we settle the score. Today, the Coalition learns what happens when you corner humanity." The impossible fleet of Iron Justice variants turned as one toward the panicking Coalition ships. 800 alien warships suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that defied every law of physics and warfare they understood. The real battle was about to begin. The battle began with a single word from Jake Sullivan: fire. Hundreds of Iron Justice variants opened fire at once. Energy beams, plasma cannons, and weapons that did not exist in Jake's timeline all fired together. The space between the human and alien fleets lit up like a deadly fireworks show. The Coalition ships tried to return fire, but they were confused and scared. Their perfect battle formation fell apart as captains received conflicting orders from panicking admirals. Some ships tried to attack, others tried to retreat, and many just hung in space doing nothing. "Direct hit on Coalition heavy cruiser," Lisa reported, watching her tactical display with amazement. 3 more enemy ships destroyed. "Captain, their shields cannot handle this much firepower." Jake nodded, but he was not watching his own screens. Instead, he was coordinating with dozens of other versions of himself through the ship's communication system. It was strange, hearing his own voice give orders he had never thought of, using tactics that came from battles he had never fought. "Alpha 7, take your squadron round their left flank," said the Jake from Timeline Gamma 2. His voice sounded tired, like someone who had been fighting this war much longer. "Beta 4, can you handle their command ship?" "Already on it," replied another Jake, this one younger and more eager. "My Iron Justice has better engines than most of you old-timers." On the main screen, Jake watched one of his alternate ships streak toward Admiral Stone's flagship. This Iron Justice moved faster than anything he had ever seen, its engines leaving trails of blue fire across the dark of space. The Coalition was trying to regain control of the battle. General Vorthak's reptilian ships formed into a defensive circle, their heavy armor allowing them to survive the human attack longer than the others. But even they were taking damage. "This is impossible," came Admiral Stone's voice over the emergency frequencies. "Humans do not have this technology. Where did these ships come from?" "From every timeline where you made the mistake of threatening us," Jake replied calmly. "Did you really think you could hunt humanity to extinction without consequences?" Empress Zilia's insect ships tried a different approach. They swarmed toward the human fleet like angry bees, hoping to overwhelm them with numbers. But the Iron Justice variants were ready for them. Ships from timelines where humanity had fought hive mind species before knew exactly how to counter their tactics. "Lisa," Jake said to his tactical officer, "coordinate with the other Lisa Brooks variants. Set up a crossfire pattern around the bug ships." Lisa nodded and began talking to dozens of versions of herself. It was confusing at first, but they quickly learned to work together. Each Lisa brought knowledge from different battles, different wars, different possibilities. The crossfire trap worked perfectly. The insect ships flew right into it, expecting the humans to retreat like they had in previous battles. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by weapons fire from every direction. Empress Zilia's flagship took a direct hit and began spinning out of control. In the engineering section, Pete Harris was working with his alternate selves to modify the temporal displacement core. The device had done its job of calling for help, but now they needed to make sure their new allies could stay in this timeline long enough to finish the battle. "The rifts are becoming unstable," reported one Pete over the communication system. "We need to reinforce the temporal anchors or some of these ships will be pulled back to their own timelines." "I have an idea," said another Pete. This one from a timeline where humans had mastered time travel decades ago. "If we link all our cores together, we can create a stable temporal bubble around the entire battle zone." Pete looked at Dr. Amy Chen, who was monitoring the dangerous energy readings. "What do you think, Amy?" Amy bit her lip nervously. "It is risky. If we lose control, we could trap everyone here forever. But if we do nothing, half our fleet might disappear in the middle of the battle." "Do it," Jake ordered from the bridge. "We did not come this far to lose because of technical problems." The Iron Justice variants began linking their temporal cores together. The space around them became even more twisted, reality bending like heated metal. But the rifts stabilized, keeping the impossible fleet in place. The coalition fleet was falling apart. Their 800 ships had been reduced to less than 400, and those were scattered across the battlefield without coordination. Some alien captains were trying to surrender, but their admirals were not accepting it. "All coalition ships maintain formation," Admiral Stone screamed over her flagship's communication system. "We still outnumber them. We can win this." But her own officers were starting to doubt. How do you fight an enemy that can call reinforcements from across time itself? How do you defeat a species that refuses to stay defeated? General Vorthak tried one last desperate attack. His remaining ships charged directly at the original Iron Justice, hoping to destroy the source of the temporal anomaly. It was a brave plan, but the reptilian general had not counted on facing opponents who knew his tactics from other timelines. "Incoming enemy charge," Lisa reported. "Vorthak is leading it personally." "Let him come," Jake said. He opened a channel to one of his alternates. "Jake Prime, can you handle this? Your ship looks like it has seen this kind of attack before." "More times than I can count," came the reply from a heavily scarred Iron Justice. "Reptilian honor charges are always the same. Watch and learn." The alternate ship moved to intercept Vorthak's attack, but instead of meeting it head-on, it suddenly dropped below the plane of battle and came up underneath the enemy formation. The reptilian ships, committed to their charge, could not change course in time. The attack that should have broken the IZ human line instead flew into empty space. Vorthak's ships found themselves exposed and surrounded, easy targets for the human fleet. "Impossible," General Vorthak hissed over the communication channels as his flagship took hit after hit. "We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." "And now you are about to be conquered by one," Jake replied. "How does it feel, General?" Vorthak's ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris. The remaining reptilian ships lost their will to fight and began to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The human fleet had them surrounded on all sides. Empress Zilia's hive mind was the next to break. The insect ships suddenly stopped fighting and began broadcasting surrender signals. The collective intelligence that controlled them had calculated the odds and decided that survival was more important than victory. "We yield," came Zelia's mechanical voice. "The hive submits to human authority. Please, do not destroy us." Admiral Stone's flagship was alone now, surrounded by the wreckage of her once mighty fleet. The proud alien commander who had hunted humanity across the galaxy was now trapped with nowhere to run. "Admiral Stone," Jake said over an open channel, "you wanted to finish off the human race. How is that working out for you?" The alien admiral's voice was bitter with defeat. "You have won this battle, human, but the coalition has 1,000 more fleets. This war is not over." Jake smiled coldly. "You are right, Admiral. This war is not over, but now it is going to be fought on our terms." The impossible fleet of Iron Justice variants tightened their formation around the last coalition ships. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about what happens when you threaten Earth's children. The final surrender was about to begin. Admiral Stone's flagship drifted powerless in space, its engines dead and weapons silent. Around it floated the wreckage of what had once been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Broken alien ships leaked atmosphere and bodies into the cold vacuum while human vessels watched like patient predators. Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his Iron Justice, looking at the tactical display that showed the complete destruction of the Coalition fleet. Out of 800 enemy ships, less than 50 remained. Most of those were damaged and defenseless, their crews waiting to see if the humans would show mercy. "Captain," Lisa Brooks said quietly, "we are receiving surrender signals from all remaining Coalition vessels. They are requesting permission to come aboard and negotiate terms." Jake nodded slowly. 3 years ago, these same aliens had bombed Earth into radioactive dust. They had hunted human survivors across the galaxy like animals. They had sworn to wipe out every last member of his species. Now they wanted to talk. "Tell them they can send their leaders over," Jake replied. "But they come unarmed and alone. Any tricks and we finish what we started here." 20 minutes later, the original Iron Justice's docking bay received 3 small shuttles. Jake watched on the security cameras as the alien leaders stepped out, their heads held low in defeat. Admiral Stone's blue skin looked pale with shock. General Vorthak's scales were dull with fear. Empress Zilia's insect body clicked nervously as her compound eyes darted around the human ship. Jake met them in the main conference room, flanked by 2 of his alternate selves. The other Jakes had volunteered to help with the negotiations, bringing knowledge from timelines where similar meetings had taken place. It was still strange seeing his own face looking back at him, but Jake was getting used to the impossible situation. "Sit down," Jake ordered, gesturing to chairs around a metal table. The alien leaders obeyed without argument, their proud warrior, attitudes replaced by the desperate need to survive. Admiral Stone was the first to speak. "Captain Sullivan, we wish to discuss terms of surrender." "Surrender?" Jake leaned back in his chair and smiled coldly. "Admiral, 3 hours ago, you were demanding that I surrender to you. You said humans had no place in this galaxy. You said we were nothing but dangerous animals that needed to be put down." The alien admiral's voice was barely a whisper. We were wrong." "Yes, you were," Jake agreed. "But being wrong is not enough. You did not just make a mistake, Admiral. You committed genocide. You turned Earth into a graveyard. You hunted my people like wild beasts across 50 star systems." General Vorthak tried to speak, his reptilian voice hissing with desperation. "Captain, please understand. We were following orders from the Coalition Council. We were told humans were a threat to galactic peace." Jake looked at the reptilian general with disgust. "And you never questioned those orders? You never wondered if maybe wiping out an entire species was wrong?" "We are soldiers," Vorthak replied weakly. "We follow orders. So did the humans who just destroyed your fleet," said one of Jake's alternates, his voice hard with anger. "The difference is, our orders came from a desire to survive. Yours came from hatred and fear." Empress Zilia's mechanical voice buzzed, nervously. "What do you want from us humans? What are your terms?" Jake stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. He could see dozens of Iron Justice variants floating in formation, their weapons still pointed at the surviving Coalition ships. Each one represented a different timeline, a different possibility for humanity's future. Together, they represented something the aliens had never expected to face: the collective will of an entire species that refused to die. "My terms are simple," Jake said without turning around. "First, you will order every Coalition fleet in the galaxy to stop hunting humans immediately. Any ship that attacks a human vessel will be destroyed." The alien leaders nodded quickly. They had seen what happened to fleets that fought humans now. "Second," Jake continued, "you will provide us with the location of every human prisoner, every slave, every survivor your forces have captured. They will be returned to us unharmed." "Yes, of course," Admiral Stone said. "We can provide those records immediately." Jake turned back to face them. "Third, you will begin rebuilding the worlds you destroyed. Earth, New Houston, Liberty Station, all of them. You will restore them to the way they were before your attack. General Vorthak's eyes widened. Captain, that will take decades. The cost will be enormous. Then you better get started, Jake replied coldly. You had no problem destroying those worlds. Now you get to fix them. Empress Zilia's hive mind clicked rapidly as it calculated the implications. And if we refuse these terms? Jake gestured toward the window where the impossible fleet waited. Then we finish what we started here. Every coalition world, every alien colony, every ship in your fleets. We have proven we can reach across time itself to call for help. How many more Iron Justice variants do you think exist? How many timelines are there where humanity won this war years ago? The aliens looked at each other with growing fear. They were beginning to understand that they had not just lost a battle. They had awakened something that could destroy their entire civilization. There is one more thing, said the Jake from Timeline Alpha 7, the one whose ship was larger and more advanced than the others. Humanity is no longer content to just survive. We are taking our place as the dominant species in this galaxy. Admiral, Stone's voice cracked with desperation. What does that mean? Jake sat back down at the table and looked each alien leader in the eye. It means the coalition is finished. From now on, human ships will patrol these trade routes. Human bases will be built on strategic worlds. Human law will apply to anyone who threatens our people. You cannot govern the entire galaxy, General Vorthak protested. There are billions of alien citizens across thousands of worlds. We do not want to govern everyone, Jake replied. We just want to make sure no one ever tries to exterminate us again. Your species can keep your worlds, your cultures, your way of life. But you will do it under human protection. The alien leaders sat in stunned silence as they realized what Jake was telling them. The coalition that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was being replaced. Humanity, the species they had tried to destroy, was now their new master. Do you accept these terms, Gao? Jake asked. The aliens looked at each other, knowing they had no choice. Outside the window, hundreds of human warships waited for their answer. Behind them were timelines full of even more ships, more possibilities, more versions of humanity that had refused to surrender. We accept, Admiral Stone whispered. Jake nodded to Dr. Amy Chen, who had been recording everything. Doctor, please transmit these terms to every coalition world and fleet. Make sure everyone understands the new reality. Over the following hours, surrender messages went out across the galaxy. Coalition fleets that had been hunting the last human survivors suddenly found themselves ordered to stand down. Alien worlds that had celebrated humanity's near extinction now learned they would be serving under human authority. The Iron Justice variants began closing their temporal rifts one by one, returning to their own timelines with the knowledge that their mission was complete. But they left behind something important, the promise that if humanity was ever threatened again, they could return. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the alien prisoners being transferred to their ships. Soon, they would spread across the galaxy, carrying word of what had happened here. The species that had been marked for extinction was now the apex predator. Captain, Lisa said quietly. What happens now? Jake looked out at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant. Somewhere out there, human survivors were learning they could come home. Somewhere out there, new human colonies would be built under the protection of Earth's impossible fleet. Now we rebuild, Jake said, and we make sure this never happens again. The battleship Iron Justice turned toward Earth, carrying the news that humanity had not just survived. They had won.